It's a beautiful sunny day here in Seoul. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-yoon. We have a lot coming up today, so let's get started by getting a glimpse of today's highlights. 'Tis the season of hiring, and while more Korean companies are expected to recruit in larger numbers this year, those on the job hunt say the challenge is no easier. Latest data show that fewer tourists are making their way to Korea, and those who are here are also spending less, threatening the tourism industry as it continues to stumble. But first, the number of new jobs added in Korea dipped under the 300,000 mark in August for the second time this year, after recording 3 straight months above that level. According to Statistics Korea on Wednesday, there were only 256,000 more jobs in August compared to the same month last year. Now, that's the lowest on-year growth for that period since 2009. Although the number of newly employed dropped under 300,000 in April, figures had started to pick up in May, before sliding back down again last month. Experts say that the recent downturn was mostly due to a decline in those self-employed, as wholesale and retail sectors continue to reel from the blowout of the MERS outbreak. Korea's household loans swelled by the third largest margin on record in July, adding to concerns about the country's rapidly ballooning household debt levels. The Bank of Korea said outstanding household debt from depository institutions stood at over $640 billion as of the end of July, with more than $8 billion in fresh loans being extended in that month. The gain includes mortgage loans transferred to the state housing finance body. The central bank attributed the increase to record low key interest rates and active housing transactions that tripled the average of July figures on record since 2006. Meanwhile, the number of homes sold last month stood at over 94,000 units, up more than 20% on year. According to the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, the figure recorded fresh highs for the month of August and extended a trend of aggressive home buying displayed since March. Accumulated home sales in the first 8 months of this year spiked 30% from last year. Regionally, transactions in Seoul recorded the largest increase, jumping 71% on year, with townhouses and multiplex homes being the most sought-out options. This comes as more people are buying houses instead of looking for apartment units with soaring lump sum jeonse deposits. Latest numbers show that Korea's tourism industry is still struggling to recover from the effects of the MERS outbreak. Now, tourist numbers are down, and travelers that come to Korea are now spending less. But the good news is that experts are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel for the country's tourism sector. Our Park Se-young tells us more.
Korea's tourism income has dropped over 10% in recent months, mainly due to the outbreak of Middle East respiratory syndrome. According to statistics released by the Bank of Korea, spending by foreign tourists in the first half of the year was $5.5 billion. This marks an 11% decline from the second half of 2014, when the total was $6.2 billion. It's the biggest drop since 2009, when the nation's tourism sector was hit by a weak Japanese yen. The MERS outbreak has also resulted in a 12% drop in the number of foreign tourists to Korea since it began in May. The number of Chinese visitors has been cut in half, from nearly 620,000 in May to 315,000 in June. Prior to that, the number of Chinese tourists had been on the rise. The number of Japanese visitors also dropped in the same period, from nearly 190,000 to just over 100,000. Although the number of inbound travelers bounced back to normal levels in August, most experts say it's a weak recovery for vacation season. Tourists are also spending less, slowing Korea's tourism growth. According to the nation's tourism account, the average spending per tourist this year up to August was roughly $1,200 per person, a 4.4% drop from last year. But the Korea Culture and Tourism Institute forecasts a recovery early next month, with Chinese airlines having restored the number of flights to Korea in time for China's 7-day National Day holiday from October 1st to 7th. Park Se-young, Business Daily.
Now, round 2 of Korea's duty-free wars is heating up, with Korea Customs Service opening the door for new applications. And while the race will likely be a face-off among Korea's largest companies, eyes are on whether the current king of duty-free, Lotte, will be able to defend its crown. Our Eunice Kim is on the story for us today.
So profitable has in-city duty-free shopping been, it's earned the nickname the goose that lays golden eggs here in Korea. Topping the sector with 51% market share is Lotte Duty-Free, earning $3.5 billion last year, ahead of number 2, the Shilla Duty-Free. But it's Shilla that has a leg up, since it succeeded in clinching a license in the July bid, while Lotte Duty-Free faces the possibility of both of its bumbling Seoul outlets closing when their licenses expire in December. So the competition will be fierce, as Walker Hill Duty-Free and Shinsegae Busan are also facing expiring permits, and new players are already gearing up to present their pitch. First batter up, heavy industries conglomerate Tusan and its shopping outlet Duta.
We've nurtured Duta into a Dongdaemun landmark, which attracts 7 million foreign visitors per year. This know-how will be a foundation for our duty-free business.
Lotte's loss in July came only 16 points out of the available 1,000 shy of runner-up Hanwha. And while it led among eliminated candidates, they also could reapply this second time around. Competitors aside, Lotte Group must also contend with souring public opinion following a very public family feud over the conglomerate's leadership succession. Up for grabs this round will be 3 duty-free spots in Seoul and 1 in Busan. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
Yesterday, we told you about how Korea's budget for next year will increase by 3% from this year's. And today, we have a new study that has concluded that 14% of the government spending this year has been quote-unquote ineffective. In its report on structural reforms and spending, Korea Economic Research Institute said $44 billion of this year's budget could have been cut out, while output could have been boosted by 8.7%. The study compared Korea's spending to those of its OECD counterparts and added the greatest chunk of waste was in public administration. The private research institute added that raising spending efficiency should run in line with establishing fiscal rules that prioritize small governance. Let's now get a quick check on how the markets fared here in Seoul today. Korean shares ended higher on Wednesday as investor sentiment was boosted by growing hopes for China's further economic stimulus measures. At the closing bell, the benchmark Kospi was up nearly 3%, finishing the day at 1934.2, while the tech-heavy Kosdaq also surged by 3.52% to end at 660.67. The Korean won also gained ground against the greenback, ending at 1,189.4 won. Thousands of job seekers will compete to land positions at desired companies as recruitment season for the second half of the year is now in full swing. In line with the government's drive to boost youth employment, businesses have increased their recruitment numbers as well. For more on the topic, our Kim Min-ji joins us in the studio today. Hello, Min-ji.
Hi, Ji-yoon. So recruitment season is back, and something that job seekers are keen to know is how much corporations are going to employ, because it also gives them a better chance to land the job. Now, if we look at this chart here, major corporations and banks have already begun taking applications. And as you can see how many people they are employing. So experts say on average, it's an increase of about 6 to 7% from last year. And to give job seekers a better chance of employment, recruiters say they will loosen some of the restrictions they had on applicant requirements. But will these efforts be enough to give Korea's youth employment a significant boost? Let's find out.
It's that time of the year again when senior college students and job seekers get busy.
It's when that extra A+, that extra point on an English exam, and that extra internship, all things job seekers in Korea strive for to land a dream job, are put to the test.
I'm going to apply for a job in the IT sector, so I focused my studies in that area and took part in a related contest to gain hands-on experience. But securing the right qualifications has always been challenging since there are so many talented people.
I'm done with my school grades and getting other qualifications that I need. Right now, I'm focusing on writing a good cover letter.
In line with the government's policies to tackle youth unemployment, a majority of the nation's conglomerates, public institutions, and banks are planning to hire big. Samsung Group announced it will take on 4,000 new recruits, while Hyundai Motor Group will also hire 4,000 employees during the second half of the year. Looking at the top 10 conglomerates alone, they plan to hire about 18,000, up 18% from a year ago, while the banking sector is also planning to increase the number of hires by 50%. And to give more people a chance to apply, a majority of workplaces have decided to scrap score-based qualifications or credentials, which are often a huge burden on job seekers, both mentally and financially.
We have decided to get rid of our requirement of receiving a GPA of 3.0.
Instead, companies will be looking for recruits equipped with expertise relevant to the positions they are applying for and individuality. Especially with grades, headshots, IT skills, and overseas experience also being scratched off from prerequisites, more weight will be placed on cover letters, aptitude tests, and other processes such as presentations. Now, the big question is, will these changes and aggressive hiring during this season help alleviate the youth unemployment problem? In June, the jobless rate for those aged between 15 and 29 stood at 10%, the highest in 16 years. It has been on the decline since, sitting at 8% last month, but it's still more than double the total unemployment rate. Experts say although there might be more jobs down the road, it won't necessarily mean such changes will be sustainable.
Companies are basically hiring new workers by getting rid of their older employees through the wage peak system. But the money saved isn't being used to create quality jobs. Instead, a majority are non-regular positions. So new hires will return to the job market in a matter of years, creating a vicious cycle.
Experts say rather than focusing on short-term outcomes by expanding the number of new hires, companies need to invest in novel growth engines that will naturally lead to job growth.
All right, Minji, so rather than conventional variables such as your GPA or test scores or so on, I guess the focus this year will be much more on the experience and related field and in that job that you're applying. But then will this make things any easier for job applicants?
Well, that was the intention initially, but it's turning out to have reverse effects. So job seekers until now have been preparing to make the perfect resume, but now they have to come up with other ways to appeal to their recruiters. So recent surveys show that some are deliberately going abroad or spending money to make portfolios, or some are even creating ghost startups to come up with an interesting story of their own that they can appeal. So basically, it's become another requirement that they have to make.
It kind of makes you wonder whether this new approach will actually work, because experts have actually been saying that the expansion of the recruitment numbers won't exactly help tackle the youth unemployment issue.
That's right. So corporations have announced ambitious plans for hiring over the next few years, but experts say the numbers don't really mean anything. Now, this is because most of the jobs are internship programs or training programs that later link you to subcontractors. And while the figures for full-time regular employees remains mainly unchanged, for these positions, the companies prefer people with work experience rather than people just out of college.
All right, then is there anything that can be done?
Well, experts say companies should make better use of the wage peak system. Now, using the money saved from the measure, they say they need to invest in new growth engines. And they say China and North Korea could be potential possibilities. And at the same time, they also say the government needs to support small and medium-sized companies and startups so they can invest in research and development to come up with new technologies and create new markets.
All right, so we're actually talking about a lot of long-term measures that could actually help tackle this unemployment issue.
That's right.
All right, thank you so much for coming in today, Minji.
My pleasure.
All right, that'll do it from me for now, but we'll be back tomorrow with more business news that matters to you. So don't forget to tune in then. Thanks so much for watching, and bye-bye for now.